All right. So, continuing down the football road, we had the semifinals this weekend for college football playoffs between Washington and Texas and Michigan and Alabama, with Michigan and Washington coming out on top. I was not able to watch either of the games, but I know, Caleb, you were able to catch both of them, and you said that it was quite the game on both sides, from what I heard. So, what do you got? What do
Yeah.
you think of it?
It was some of the best football period that I've seen in the last little while. After watching, especially going into this year, like watching a lot more college football than I ever thought I would, getting really into the story of this Washington team in particular, like going from watching the Seahawks just completely die on the field against the Steelers to the next day being able to watch this Washington team look like such a great, well-oiled machine, and these games just feeling like there's so much behind them, like they're so important, and being able to go and watch these teams who have never played each other, like the like Washington's never going to play Texas in a season normally, to just see these kind of like heavyweight juggernaut matchups come to fruition was fantastic, and we kind of avoided what we normally see in college football, where one team is in these semifinals. One of the big issues has been that a lot of the times one of the teams is a true powerhouse and the other one's just kind of snuck in on an easy schedule and they get like blown away 63-7. That was not the case today. um I'll kind of go in, and another point to say about these matchups, it's the last time we'll see this format, in terms of having only the top four teams make it. And we talked about this a little bit in our Florida State episode, or our Florida State segment. But they're going to expand to 12 next year, um, which I think will be great. But this was certainly a good way for the four team playoff to work out, because both of these games were fantastic. I'll let you chime in, Simon, just before we get into the actual games.
Yeah.
What do you think about that expansion into the 12 team format versus just having the four? Do you think that's something that will be of benefit to college football,
Well,
even
again,
just from like an outsider perspective?
I feel like a broken record in this, where I just feel like, why wasn't it that from the start, right? Like, it's just,
Yeah.
it feels very strange that you'd limit. And I again, broken record. I had said the same thing. Why would you limit the games that are bringing in the most profit? Like, these are the games that people just go
Yeah.
nuts for. Like, everybody's going to be watching on TV. Everybody is going to be going crazy for it, and you are limiting it to four games or four teams. Like, why? You're just wasting money. Like, you're not really maximizing. Even if you're just looking at it from a business side, you're not maximizing profits, and you sure as hell aren't like just doing the best by your fans. Because I mean, this 12 game thing is gonna, like we mentioned, allow for a lot more teams to make the playoffs and allow for upsets, allow for a lot more situations that I think a lot of people are going to be really looking ahead to, and I think it's great. While, like you
Yeah.
said, this is a good way to end the the four game, because or the four team. Jesus, like, this is a good way to end it, but it shouldn't have been a thing from the start. Is kind of what I'd hit on right away.
Yeah. And I completely agree. And I think it also solves a lot of the issues that we've been seeing, like getting more into college football. I'm seeing all of these other bowl games that don't really matter that are being played with all the teams that didn't make the playoffs. And all of the star players are sitting, and like the quarterbacks are like transferring before they even finish the season because they know the bowl games don't really matter for anything. This is going to open it up to where those top teams can actually compete at their fullest strength, because otherwise you get games like Georgia Florida State where Georgia wins by 63 because Florida State's playing their third string quarterback, or the even the Ohio State Missouri game where Ohio State is playing their third string quarterback because their regular guy transferred to Syracuse, before the bowl game. So I think that will solve a lot of that. Getting into the games. I'll do like a quick little recap of them. So Michigan, Alabama, first of all, fantastic. The first Rose Bowl that I've ever watched. That, just seeing that kind of atmosphere in that stadium, absolutely packed in there as the sun kind of goes down. It felt like this huge event. And so especially with Alabama, even as a casual college football watcher, Alabama, right? Like they're the ones that win literally every year because Nick Saban has done such a great job of building that program. But Michigan obviously ranked number one. Alabama hasn't had that same kind of season, and coming into it, it looked like Michigan was the better team. It's just that Michigan's special teams was atrocious. Michigan muffs a punt to begin the game, gives Alabama an easy first touchdown. Michigan answers back, but then they have a bunch of miscues. They miss an extra point to bring it to 13-7 instead of 14-7. Just a bunch of little mistakes that keep Alabama in the game because Alabama's offense was absolutely terrible for most of the first half because their offensive line just couldn't get anything going. But after that, in the second half, they came out looking like a completely different team. They were able to actually take the lead before J.J. McCarthy and the Wolverines had this incredible drive to go and tie it. A pass that tipped off, and I've never seen this before. It tipped off an Alabama defender's finger, but it kept the spiral going. So all that it did was just deflect the pass higher. But the spiral was still there, was still on target, but the Michigan receiver has to make this incredible leaping acrobatic catch to keep the drive alive. One of the best connections I've seen in any football game in recent memory. Absolutely incredible. Comes down to overtime, and maybe this is where I'll get you to chime in, Simon, because
I like how I just get to be the kid in the
game,
back who occasionally raises his hand. This is fun. I get to just ride the bench for this one.
Oh yeah, no, this is fun. I like yapping my mouth off about football, so this is great for me too. But obviously this game goes to overtime, and I don't know. Do you know how the college football overtime works, Simon?
Oh.
If you know how the CFL overtime works, then it's the same thing.
Okay, then yes. Because I was going to say it's the same as the CFL, where I know it lightly, but every time it comes up, like every time it happens in a game I'm watching, I learn again. It's that type of thing, right? Where it's just like,
yeah.
So I've kind of forgot, but I definitely did know at some point.
Yeah. So it's each team gets the ball. Each team is guaranteed the ball, which is not so in the NFL unless it's in the playoffs. Each team gets the ball from the 25-yard line, and it's basically a shootout. So if you score, then the other team gets the ball and has a chance to match. And then if the other team either like kicks a field goal or doesn't score a touchdown, the other team has an opportunity to go down and beat that score to win. That's all that is, and you just go back and forth until there's an eventual winner.
Okay.
Versus the NFL, where it's literally if you score a touchdown, you win basically. And honestly, just watching this game, it's just so refreshing to see that kind of an overtime system instead of the terrible NFL one.
And people have been
mad
at the NFL one for a while, right? Like that's not new.
Yeah, it's not. It's really like seeing a system. It's a system that works, and I don't know why they haven't adopted it. So in this game, Michigan gets the ball first. They go down and score. Alabama, they get down to about the 5, and they can't punch it in. Can you, Simon? Someone who didn't watch the game, it's 4th and 3.
Yeah.
4th and goal from the 3-yard line. Alabama, this is the game, right? Because Michigan's already scored a touchdown. Alabama needs a touchdown to keep the game going. What play do you think Alabama runs from the 3-yard line, 4th and goal?
I'm not sure. That's a good question. I think the obvious choice, because this is the conversation it feels like we have every time this happens because of a certain team that did a very similar thing. I think they probably passed it.
Nope, they did not.
Oh,
they did not
actually ran it. I was gonna say because that's where I felt like you were going with it.
Can you guess which player they ran the ball with, though?
Oh, wow.
Not their running back.
I was about to say, I don't. If you're asking for a name, I don't know if I can properly give you one. I'm not a big college football guy. But...
If you give me a position, what?
Did they run it with like a defensive tackle or some shit? Like.
Nope, they pulled a quarterback dive. There you go. You pulled up the player on the screen, Jalen Milroe. That's who they decided. Jalen Milroe, obviously very athletic quarterback. Like he's a great runner of the football, but pulling a quarterback dive on quarterback draw on 4th and 3. Oh, terrible play
I
call
was
to
gonna
end the
say
game.
that's a
The
lot of
snap,
yards to get like against some defensive
yeah,
linemen. That's rough. Like, I'd understand it if you
especially when the
actively
Michigan
believed.
defensive line is so good.
Yeah, that and like you see when Cam Newton was still in the NFL, for example, you'd see that every once in a while where it's this guy who legitimately could have probably you could have made the argument that that actually makes sense to do, but like I don't know much about Alabama's quarterback in this situation, but I'm assuming he's not Cam Newton, just like wild shot in the dark. I would
He's
argue,
not. He's a good runner, but he's no Cam Newton.
yeah, like yeah, it seems a little odd to me, that's for sure.
It's also that Alabama's offensive line had been terrible. Like they're not that matchup is not one that they're looking to exploit. Michigan, I think, had 5 sacks in the first half, if that gives you any perspective on it.
Jesus.
So, but yeah, that's how Alabama finally gets out of the playoff, and thank goodness, honestly, because I would not have liked to see another Alabama college football championship. That's just not fun. We'll move on to the Washington Texas game, which was fantastic. Another great game. So this one kind of went back and forth. Washington, their big thing is their offense. So they had Michael Penix Jr., who I think I don't know if he will be, but he should be a first-round pick next year. Roma Dunze, his #1 receiver, should also be a first-round pick next year. Absolutely just killing it. Michael Penix is one of the most accurate deep balls. It reminds me a little bit of Russell Wilson, like just with how accurate he is on some of those moonshots that he has. I don't know if that's just the Seahawks fan in me talking, but it's absolutely incredible to watch. So they kind of went back and forth. Washington had similar special teams mistakes that Michigan did, with another muffed punt, which was happening all day in both games, giving Texas the opportunity to tie them up at 7. They kind of shoot out back and forth. It's 21-21 at the half. And then it ends up being this weird kind of tale of two quarters things. Washington goes up. By the end of the third quarter, they're up 34-21. And at that point, you're kind of thinking they've taken all of the momentum. I think the yards gained in the third quarter for two teams, Washington had like 160 and Texas had about 7. If that kind of gives you a snapshot of how badly Washington outplayed Texas in the third quarter. But Texas claws their way back. But they get their way they're within 9, and they have this long drive. They try to get in for a touchdown, but they get stopped. They have to go for a field goal with about 1:15 left. And just because this is kind of fun, just to see how in context how dumb some of these decisions made by coaches are. Let's pull the Ask Simon in terms of
if you're Washington, true offensive coordinator of us all.
Yes.
Or is this offense or defense?
This is offense. This is offense. So you're Washington.
Yeah.
You're up 6. There's 1:12 left in the game. Texas has 2 timeouts. What do?
So Texas is up
Texas
by 6.
Only
they only have 6.
No, Washington is up
Washington
by 6.
is 6.
Washington
okay.
is up by 6.
What down am I
Washington is up by 6.
Or is this like what I
First
do for
down.
an entire drive?
This is what do you do for an entire drive? First down, 1:12 left. Texas only has 2 timeouts to stop the clock.
All right, I'll alley-oop you, son of a bitch. I'll run the ball.
Okay, that is what they did, but even a better scenario would be to kneel.
Oh, that too.
Because Texas only has 2 timeouts.
Fair point.
But Simon, let's follow. Normally, your strategy would be a good one too, because running the ball is relatively low risk, right? Unless this happens. So, Washington runs it on first down, Texas takes a timeout. Runs it on second down, Texas takes a timeout. Then they run it again on third down, and Texas can't take a timeout. So it's the clock's winding down. They would only have maybe about 15 to 20 seconds left to go the entire field and score a touchdown. Pretty unlikely. However, because the Washington offensive coordinator followed your advice and ran the ball, he got the Washington running back, who had already been injured previously in the game, got injured again, which caused Washington to need to use an injury timeout to stop
Oh
the clock
no. Oh, that
and give
sucks.
Texas the ball with 50 seconds left instead of 20. And with that, Texas goes all the way down the field and gets to the 10-yard line with 10 seconds left. And they get a free 4 shots at the end zone from the 10-yard line, basically. And by some miracle, Washington is able to stop them. A couple bad throws, an almost sack that he has to throw out of, and then a fantastic play in the end zone that was kind of reminiscent of, the classic Richard Sherman tip in the corner of the end zone. It's just a one-on-one, cornerback bats the ball away, Washington somehow comes out on top. It was one of those games, it's like, if Washington had lost that game, like, I don't know, just the fact that they would have won that game very easily if their own player didn't get injured. That kind of stung. Even though they did win, even though they did end up winning the game as they well should have, they were the better team. Just even the fact that that's a possibility, like that was kind of it put a lot more suspense in the game than there probably should have been. But it led to a very interesting ending. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what else to say about that one. It's just like the fact that that's even a rule that you have to use an injury timeout there, even when the clock would have clearly run down to 20 seconds. That part doesn't quite sit right with me.
Yeah, and that is interesting, I guess. Like, it's, I don't know. I do agree with you. But I think this opens up a good way, a good point to end on, I think. Just in, if you had to pick, national championship has now been decided. You know who's going to be playing in it. Who do you got, Washington or Michigan?
Well, I'm a very biased observer here because obviously I'm going to be cheering hard for Washington. Like they've had such a great season. I think it'll be tough. Obviously Michigan is a fantastic team. I think Washington will come out on top just because I think their defense has been much improved, and I think in these close games, Washington just has so much experience winning in the clutch. Like they've done it all year, all season. They've had so many close games that they've had to pull out of, and I think they've had lots of great competition in the Pac-12 more than they normally do. So if I'm picking a game, I think it's going to be very close. I wouldn't be shocked if this one goes to overtime, but I think Washington pulls it out by a touchdown or so. It's going to be a high-scoring game. I think the biggest matchup is if it's a high-scoring game, Washington wins. If it's a low-scoring game, that means Michigan wins because it's really all about Washington's offense versus Michigan's defense. I think Washington's offense is able to run up the score a little bit. I'm going to say it's like a 38-35 Washington win.
Okay.
At least I hope so.
Yeah, I don't have a prediction. I don't know enough about both teams. So I'll just agree with yours. Wow, Caleb, that sounds awfully smart. I'm going to say the same thing because I did my research and definitely 100% know what I'm talking about and think Washington is also going to win. Wow, who could have saw that one coming? And from the same score. God.
You could keep the same score and then just say
That's
Michigan
an
will win
excellent
so that you
point.
can make me look like an
Michigan
idiot.
Michigan beats Washington 38-0. Clock it in.
Wow. Okay.
Yep. Bet your money on him.
We'll see who's right.
We'll see who's right.
Knowing how this kind of thing works, it's probably going to be you.
Oh, it always is.
Yeah.
After all, my college football
not-
knowledge will forever beat yours every time, 100% of the time, because I know everything about everything, and you should follow my betting page because which I definitely have, by the way. I was actually told by a relative. I think I told you this, Caleb. I was told by a relative who has been watching a couple episodes. Jordan, if you somehow made it this far into another episode, thank you for watching. But I'm gonna bring this up anyway. Jordan, my cousin Jordan told me that we should do some betting stuff on here. We gotta turn it into a betting podcast. And I just told him that neither me nor Caleb know anything about betting. So I think it would just be really funny. I think that we should add a new segment to the end of every podcast where we give our picks but we gotta keep a stat on how many we get wrong. To really show, like, we'll just like be where me and you are just super, super confident. Like, pick this, become a millionaire type thing. Where we go, and then we'll just have a stat at the bottom of the screen where it shows like what me and you are. Where it'll be like, I've hit on like 2 out of 36 and you've hit on like 3 out of 47. You know what I mean? Like, just have that kind of stat at the bottom and just be super overconfident about it. I think that would be an incredible idea for a segment.
Our goal is to just be the worst betting podcast.
That's what I mean.
Possibly.
That's what I mean. Like, comically bad. Where like
we're like the
Caleb.
We're
you know what my prediction?
We're gonna be the
Will Levis over 450 yards, become a millionaire right now. It'll happen. I know a lot about how betting works.
I mean, I think we're gonna become the Armand White of betting. If you don't know who that is, look him up. But that's basically the idea is that anything that is bad is good, and anything that is good is bad. So if we pick something, you have the easiest money in your life because you just run to the opposite of whatever we say.
That's a very good point.
Because it's true. Like, even if you're 2 out of 36 and I'm 3 out of 47. That means you have about like a 90% hit rate if you just bet the opposite of what we tell you every single time.
That's a very good point.
That means we're actually the best betting.
I was going to say, holy, we'd be making people a lot of money, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's like the Drake bet. That's what we are. We're like betting against. So when you're trying to figure out who you should bet for, first you look at who Drake dropped $1 million on, and then you look at me and Caleb's picks. And then you'd make money.
And if they line up, if they line up,
oh God, put the house.
Slam the opposite.
Yeah, put the house.
Bet your entire mortgage. Yeah.
God, bet your kids. Like, seriously, like what's the worst that could happen? Me being right?
Seriously.
Holy smokes, no.
Never gonna happen.
Never gonna happen. That's what we got to start doing. We got to start doing a money line at the end of each podcast. Me and you both make our money lines for the week, just to see how bad we are at it. Because I've done this in my own head where like I'll watch a UFC event, right, and I'll think, wow, I feel like I got all of those fights right, and then I'll like the next time I'll like count it, like I'll write down my predictions and then count it in my head, and I'll go like 1 for 6, and I'll be like, oh, maybe I should be a better. That's pretty much how it goes. But yeah.
Oh yeah.
Tune in next time to the Trick Play Betting Podcast. It'll happen.
Oh, it definitely will.
Oh, yeah, big time.